Hey there! Today's discussion is about a brief literary and historical history or background of Britain in the 18th century. So, the period between 1660 and 1785 was a time of tremendous external visible expansion for Great Britain, as the nation came to be called after the Union Act in 1707 joined Scotland to England and Wales. Britain became a world power, an empire on which the sun never set. But the nation also changed internally. A sense of new, expanding possibilities as well as modern problems transformed the daily life of the British people and offered them fresh ways of thinking about their relations to nature and to each other. Between 1666 and 1766, the London population doubled, changing from approximately 400,000 to 800,000 people. More than the population shift, the cultural and commercial life of Britain and its empire increasingly centered on London. Though a vast majority of English people continued to work at farming, it was the city that set the tone for business, pleasure, and an emerging consumer society. بعد كده بسطرين أو 3 تقريبا new standards of taste were set by what the people of London wanted, not the monarchy, and art joined with commerce to satisfy those desires. Artist William Hogarth made his living not as earlier painters had done, but through portraits of royal and noble patrons, but by selling his print to a large and appreciative public. الباراجراف الجديد the invention of the steam engine in 1698 and further related inventions drove the Industrial Revolution via literal and figurative steam power. The acquisition of coal as a main source of power highly influenced British lifestyle, as mining and shipping played a large role in the development of industrial towns into cities. بعد كده بسطرين كمان as the British economic engine changed, so did their banking. The Bank of England was founded in 1694, transportation and leisure systems, the latter playing a major role in terms of what people read with their increasing free time. طيب, how about literary style in England, in Britain in the 18th century? From 1660 to 1785, the primary focus of the literature was an effort to refine literature according to specific principles, primarily by looking inward at society and considering what was good and bad about practices and people. In principle, literature was becoming more elegant and simple in its execution. Whether this was actually happening is another argument. In summary, the idea for most writers during the time was to provide pleasure and express ideas to readers that everyone could understand in language that was accessible to all. Okay? So the shared human experience, especially through nature, was central to this literary project. الباراجراف الجديد high verse form, the heroic couplet for example, thrived during the period, but less formal forms of writing also existed and thrived in some avenues, thus creating a steep divide between high art and low art. Put more succinctly, although all writing from 1660 to 1785 didn't follow exactly the same pattern, it was generally known for the following qualities. ايه بقى هي المواصفات ديت او الكواليتيز ديت؟ an emphasis on intellect and sociability, the poet as highly educated craftsman, poetry as crafted and restrained, reason and order holding paramount importance, urban life, aristocratic tradition, and the classical past were all very important subjects. Okay, so With the restoration of the monarchy, Charles in 1660 established church policies were also restored, giving Anglican clergy broad powers that they used to try and eliminate religious dissent, often with the cruel and unfortunate results that haunted the nation for centuries. Religious differences and power struggle came to a head, especially when James II took the throne, leading to a rift between Jacobites, those loyal to James's family and dissidents, and the ruling body of the nation. Still, the country did avoid bloody revolution through William, who gave up some state powers, reinforced parliament as the ruling body of the nation, and moved towards increased individual rights. Struggles of religion and power never really went away, though, with the Whig and Tory parties working out their religious and ideological differences in struggle throughout the era. Okay? طيب, how about cultural shifts? There was a general sense during the 18th century that society at long last was improving, as the many advances in science and technology began to surpass the understanding of any one individual, as opposed to the educated scholar of early centuries who dabbled in most areas of knowledge. The 18th century was one of the first times in Britain where specialization of scholarship was seen as necessary. Women, while certainly not treated equally in education or anywhere else, were increasingly educated at aristocratic level, and the proto-feminist authors such as Mary Wollstonecraft laid the foundation for later centuries to move towards a more equal society in terms of gender. الباراجراف الجديد. Philosophical thought also was moving throughout the period towards a stronger belief in the inherent good of human nature and connections between people. الباراجراف الجديد. Along with print shifts, the ways in which authors produced their work also changed rapidly at this time, with the ability to make money via the pen, يعني إني أكسب المال عن طريق القلم وعن طريق الكتابة, taking off due to the new print culture. There was also an emergent gap in who, write, and why. Upper class, wealthy people were now able to print their own work, and distinctions in purpose began to emerge. فآخر سطر بيقول in truth this shift was difficult since English was constantly in flux then as it's now, with new words and usage constantly flooding British society. So let's begin with the first literary figure, who is John Dryden. Dryden was born on 9th of August 1631 into a comfortable financially family, the oldest of 14 children. His formal education began at Westminster School, led by headmaster Dr. Richard Busby, who famously ran his school in strict fashion and sometimes employed corporal punishment to keep pupils in line. In 1650, Dryden began attending Trinity College, where he earned his BA degree in 1654. His father died the same year, providing an inheritance that supported Dryden while he began his literary career. How about style and works? Dryden was a very gifted writer who wrote in a variety of genres and fields. Although best known today for his poetry, he spent 1664 to 1681 primarily working as a playwright or a dramatist. Reviews of his plays are mixed, with some productions earning mostly positive reviews while others were critiqued rather harshly. Dryden was also a thoughtful literary critic concerned mostly with form, style, politics, and in addition to his essays, he also paid the bills for his family later in life. And here we have some work cited for further readings. Annus Mirabilis by John Dryden, as we viewed rather on the previous video. Key contributions, critical ideas, and complexities. Dryden was one of the first authors to transmit his serious interest in literature into essay and poetic form, leading Samuel Johnson to refer to him as the father of English criticism. In terms of form, Dryden established the heroic couplet as a standard form of English poetry. In time, heroic couplets were passed down to Alexander Pope, and his influence on other writers is clear. Dryden's work is famously linked to the crown. He wrote political satire that took issues with those who opposed James, a Roman Catholic actually, from taking the throne. He also wrote a number of poems celebrating English victories and is sometimes criticized for his patriotism and loyalty to the crown. At one point, he was looked down on for what seemed like unfailing allegiance to those in power, but his belief seems authentic given he gave up money and power late in life due to his faith. Now let's move on to Alexander Pope, a quick revision. Alexander Pope, as an early child, was born to Roman Catholic parents. He was also Catholic, which hindered his rights as a British citizen. In London on May 21, 1688, his early life and later life as well was marked by physical challenges. And of course, this sort of physical deformity, they say, that made him an excellent satirist. So, ده تقريبا بعد سطرين. From 1696 to 1700, Pope was tutored at home by a priest. His religion kept him from attending many schools of the day, but he was largely self-educated through reading in his father's library. So he was exposed بعدها بسطرين to Latin, Greek, French, and Italian by his teenage years. Pope was not an accidental poet. He actively sought to become a great poet, and he wrote early and often on the art and role of poetry in society. Despite his physical challenges, Pope's work eventually led to a number of strong friendships with other elite writers of the day, counting among his friends Jonathan Swift, Joy Gay, Thomas A. Parnell. Even before becoming well established in the literary community, Pope was a commercially successful author. In fact, Pope is arguably the first English writer to earn a lucrative and comfortable living by publishing his work. Shakespeare, of course, also earned enough to retire, but much of the bard's income came from working as an actor and manager. Regarding style and works, Pope is famous for a number of works, including Essay on Man, The Rape of the Lock, and Duncan. His first real political success was an essay on criticism. His works are often marked by harsh, somehow biting satire on society. And his emphasis on form. In particular, The Rape of the Lock stands out as an impressive mock epic that melded metrical and linguistic precision with witty satire. Evidence of Pope's other interests, he was an amateur painter, for example, surface in the breadth of his writings and showcase his eye for detail. Pope championed high form and looked down on sensational art that appealed to lower denominators, feeling that such works were actually immoral and harmful to society. Stylistically, Pope was the champion of the heroic couplet, a rigid form that he wielded masterfully in establishing writing that was both precise and harmonious for the reader. So, in addition to his extensive production of literary works, Pope was also very famous for producing tomes of the works of other grades, publishing a volume of Shakespeare's works, although there are some critics who fairly criticize Pope's work on Shakespeare as being inaccurate, and also translated Homer's The Iliad. He did such an excellent job translating Homer that he made enough money to purchase an estate in Twickenham, which allowed him to escape the bustle of London when needed and a peaceful place to write. So Pope earned himself a number of enemies over the years, to the point where he published some of his work anonymously later in his life. Pope was also one of the earlier writers to wage his personal intellectual, social, and political wars through his writings. He satirized those who critiqued his work, sometimes savagely, and was instrumental in creating the divide between high and low art that marked his era, leading some to label his time as the new classical era due to its high forms. For better or for worse, Pope set himself as a defender of what he saw as traditional values, reason, humanistic learning, virtue, etc.